On November 28, 2016, NBA Youngboy was arrested on stage in Austin, Texas, just 26 days after his cousin was gunned down in the streets of Baton Rouge. What happened in those 26 days would transform a rising teenage rapper into one of hip-hop's most controversial figures, facing attempted murder charges that could have ended his career before it truly began. But to understand why Youngboy risked everything for revenge, we need to go back to where it all started, the dangerous streets of North Baton Rouge, where loyalty isn't just a word, it's a matter of life and death. This is the story of how losing his cousin Boozilla changed NBA Youngboy forever. Before we dive into this tragic tale, let's establish who we're talking about. NBA Youngboy, born Kentrell Deshaun Gaulden, emerged from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, as one of the most prolific and successful rappers of his generation. By 2016, at just 17 years old, he was already building a massive following on YouTube and had signed a multi-million-dollar deal with Atlantic Records. But Youngboy's success didn't happen in a vacuum. Baton Rouge has one of the highest murder rates in America, and the city's rap scene is deeply intertwined with street politics. In Baton Rouge, rap crews often double as street gangs, and beefs that start over music can quickly turn deadly. To understand the hip-hop culture of Baton Rouge, you need to know about the crew system. These aren't just record labels, they're tight-knit groups that combine music, street credibility, and genuine brotherhood. Members live together, make music together, and most importantly, they protect each other at all costs. Youngboy's crew, NBA, which stands for Never Broke Again, operated under this code. And at the center of this story is Youngboy's cousin, a young man whose death would set off a chain of events that nearly destroyed everything Youngboy had worked for. Keandre Ricks, known on the streets as Boozilla, wasn't just NBA Youngboy's cousin. He was his brother in every way that mattered. Born and raised in the same North Baton Rouge neighborhood, specifically around 38th Street and Chipola, both young men grew up in an environment where survival often meant making impossible choices. According to multiple sources close to the family, Boozilla was slightly older than Youngboy and often served as a protective figure during their childhood. In a neighborhood where absent fathers were the norm rather than the exception, older cousins and friends often filled that void. For Youngboy, who lost his father to a 55-year prison sentence when he was just 8 years old, Boozilla represented stability and loyalty in an unstable world. The evidence of their close relationship can be found throughout Youngboy's early music. In his 2015 debut mixtape Life Before Fame, Youngboy frequently references family members who had his back, and those who knew them personally confirmed that Boozilla was always in Youngboy's corner. But their bond went deeper than just family ties. Both young men were affiliated with BBG, Bottom Boy Gorillas, a street crew that controlled territory in their section of North Baton Rouge. In the complex ecosystem of Baton Rouge street politics, BBG was locked in an ongoing conflict with TBG, Top Boy Gorillas, a rivalry that would ultimately prove fatal. What makes this relationship even more significant is the timing. As Youngboy's music career began to take off in 2015 and 2016, he was faced with a choice that many young rappers from the streets have to make: stay loyal to the neighborhood that raised you, or distance yourself for the sake of your career. According to interviews with NBA crew members, Youngboy never considered abandoning his family or his neighborhood. This loyalty, while admirable, would soon put both him and Boozilla in grave danger. The turning point came when Youngboy made the decision to leave TBG, Top Boy Gorillas, the crew he had initially been affiliated with, to start his own group, NBA. This wasn't just a business decision. It was seen as a betrayal by his former associates. In the street code of Baton Rouge, switching sides isn't just frowned upon. It can be a death sentence. To understand what happened to Boozilla, we need to examine the escalating tensions in Baton Rouge's rap scene throughout 2016. Youngboy's departure from TBG had created a power vacuum, and more dangerously, a bitter rivalry with his former friends. The evidence of this growing conflict can be found in the music itself. Throughout 2016, Youngboy released a series of mixtapes, Mind of a Menace, Mind of a Menace 2, and Before I Go, that contained increasingly aggressive lyrics directed at his former TBG associates, particularly a rapper named G-Money. But it wasn't just Youngboy who was caught up in this beef. Boozilla, as Youngboy's cousin and a known BBG member, was automatically considered an enemy by TBG affiliates. The street politics of Baton Rouge don't allow for neutrality. If you're family with someone's enemy, you become an enemy yourself. The situation reached a boiling point on the 16th of July 2016 when Boozilla released a song called Forgive Me. This wasn't just a rap song, it was a declaration of war. In the track, Boozilla directly dissed FL Duka, a rapper affiliated with TBG, claiming that Duka was scared to walk through the South and that BBG was laying down the law in their territory. According to multiple sources familiar with Baton Rouge street politics, this song essentially put a target on Boozilla's back. In the unwritten rules of street rap, when you call someone out by name and question their credibility, you're inviting retaliation. What makes this even more tragic is that Boozilla was just 18 years old when he released Forgive Me. Like many young men in similar situations, he may not have fully understood the consequences of his words. In the heat of defending his family and his neighborhood, he had painted himself as a target. The evidence suggests that TBG affiliates took Boozilla's disses seriously. Social media posts from the time show increasing tension between the two crews, with veiled threats and challenges being exchanged regularly. Those close to the situation report that by the fall of 2016, everyone knew something was going to happen. The only question was when. Meanwhile, Youngboy's career was reaching new heights. His September 2016 single 38 Baby was gaining massive traction on YouTube, and industry insiders were taking notice. The irony is heartbreaking. Just as Youngboy was on the verge of achieving everything he had worked for, the street politics that had shaped his life were about to destroy it. The night that changed everything, the 2nd of November 2016, started like any other day in North Baton Rouge. Boozilla was going about his normal routine, unaware that this would be his last day alive. According to police reports and witness statements, he spent the evening in his neighborhood, less than a block from his family home on Nebraska Street. Just after midnight, as November 2nd became November 3rd, Boozilla was riding his bike near the 2000 block of Nebraska Street when a vehicle approached. What happened next was captured in a police report that would later become evidence in multiple court cases. Unknown assailants opened fire on Boozilla, hitting him multiple times in the upper torso. He was found lying in the middle of the street, just steps away from the house where his family was sleeping. Despite the proximity to his home and the presence of neighbors, no one was able to help him in time. The immediate aftermath was devastating. Boozilla's mother, Kenya Taylor, gave a heartbreaking interview to local news station WBRZ, describing the moment she learned her son had been killed. "It's like I'm dreaming and I haven't woke up yet," she said. "Like I had a bad dream. I'm just waiting on the Lord to wake me up." But the tragedy didn't end with Boozilla's death. According to police reports, within hours of the murder, the streets of North Baton Rouge erupted in violence. The evidence suggests that multiple parties were seeking immediate retaliation, turning the neighborhood into a war zone. What makes this situation even more complex is the web of relationships and rivalries that existed in Baton Rouge's rap scene. While FL Duka was widely suspected of being involved in Boozilla's murder due to their public beef, he was never officially charged with the crime. Instead, two other individuals, Trayshan Coates and Monty Carey, were eventually arrested and charged with second-degree murder. However, the street narrative was different from the official police version. According to multiple sources in the Baton Rouge rap community, the murder was seen as a direct result of the ongoing TBG versus BBG NBA conflict, regardless of who actually pulled the trigger. For Youngboy, who was in the early stages of his career and trying to balance street credibility with mainstream success, Boozilla's death represented an impossible choice. He could either accept the loss and focus on his music career, or he could follow the street code that demanded immediate retaliation. The evidence of Youngboy's mental state in the hours following his cousin's death can be found in the testimonies of those close to him. According to NBA crew members, Youngboy was devastated but also filled with rage. In the world he came from, allowing your family member's murder to go unanswered wasn't just seen as weak, it was seen as a betrayal of everything you stood for. The decision that nearly destroyed everything. What happened next would define the rest of NBA Youngboy's life and career. Approximately 9.5 hours after Boozilla was murdered, Youngboy made a decision that would land him in jail and nearly end his music career before it truly began. According to police reports and court documents, on the morning of the 2nd of November 2016, around 9:30 a.m., a vehicle containing Youngboy and 3 of his NBA affiliates pulled up to the 2000 block of Kentucky Street, just a couple of blocks away from where Boozilla had been killed hours earlier. The evidence suggests this wasn't a random drive-by. Kentucky Street was known territory for those suspected of being involved in Buzilla's murder. The evidence suggests this wasn't a random drive-by. Kentucky Street was known territory for those suspected of being involved in Buzilla's murder. Youngboy and his crew had come looking for revenge, and they were prepared to use deadly force to get it. What happened next was captured in multiple police reports and would later be used as evidence in court. Shots were fired from Youngboy's vehicle, but the retaliation attempt went wrong. Instead of hitting their intended targets, one of Youngboy's own crew members, NBA Joe, was shot in the neck, allegedly by friendly fire or return gunfire from their targets. The situation quickly spiraled out of control. With NBA Joe bleeding from a gunshot wound to the neck, the crew had to flee the scene immediately. They drove toward LSU Lakes, but their car got a flat tire and crashed. At this point, Youngboy and the other shooters fled on foot, leaving NBA Joe in the vehicle where he was eventually found by police and given medical attention. The evidence from this incident paints a picture of young men who were acting on emotion rather than logic. Youngboy was just 17 years old at the time, and the decision to seek immediate revenge nearly cost him everything he had worked for. But the story doesn't end there. According to police reports, the violence continued the following day. On the 3rd of November 2016, at approximately 9:49 a.m., shooters returned to Nebraska Street, the same area where Buzilla lived, and was killed. Officers nearby reported hearing 37 gunshots fired by two shooters, who then fled in a getaway vehicle, leaving two homes on the street riddled with bullets. The escalation was so severe that local schools were placed on lockdown out of fear that the violence would spread to innocent bystanders. News reports from the time described the neighborhood as being like hell, with residents afraid to leave their homes. What makes this even more tragic is that Youngboy's music career was just beginning to take off. His song 38 Baby was gaining massive traction, and industry executives were starting to pay attention. But instead of being in the studio working on his craft, he was on the streets seeking revenge for his cousin's death. The evidence suggests that Youngboy knew the risks he was taking. In later interviews, he would admit that he understood the potential consequences of his actions. But in the moment, the street code that had shaped his entire life demanded that he respond to his cousin's murder with violence. For nearly a month after the shooting, Youngboy remained free while police investigated the incidents. During this time, he continued to work on his music, perhaps hoping that his rising career would somehow protect him from the consequences of his actions. But on the 28th of November 2016, that hope was shattered in the most dramatic way possible. Youngboy was scheduled to perform at a show in Austin, Texas, a performance that represented his growing success and expanding fan base. Instead, it became the scene of one of hip-hop's most shocking arrests. According to multiple witnesses and video footage that later surfaced, U.S. Marshals stormed the venue just as Youngboy was about to take the stage. The arrest was swift and decisive, with federal agents taking the 17-year-old rapper into custody in front of hundreds of fans who had come to see him perform. The charges were serious: attempted first-degree murder in connection with the November 2nd drive-by shooting. If convicted, Youngboy faced the possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison. For a teenager who had just signed a multi-million-dollar record deal, the arrest represented a complete reversal of fortune. The evidence against Youngboy was substantial. Police reports indicated that he had been personally identified as one of the shooters in the Kentucky Street incident. Witnesses had placed him at the scene, and ballistics evidence suggested that an assault rifle had been fired from the vehicle he was traveling in. But what makes this case particularly complex is the context in which it occurred. Youngboy wasn't just a random teenager involved in street violence. He was a rising rap star whose music was gaining millions of views on YouTube. The arrest forced the hip-hop community to confront uncomfortable questions about the relationship between street credibility and artistic success. The immediate aftermath of the arrest was devastating for Youngboy's career prospects. His bond was set at $200,000, and he was facing the possibility of decades in prison. Record label executives who had been courting him suddenly became hesitant to associate with someone facing such serious charges. However, the evidence also suggests that Youngboy's legal team was preparing a strong defense. They argued that their client was acting in self-defense and that the shooting was a direct response to his cousin's murder. In the street code of Baton Rouge, this wasn't just understandable, it was expected. What makes this situation even more tragic is the timing. Youngboy's arrest came just as his music was reaching a wider audience. His YouTube channel was gaining subscribers daily, and industry insiders were predicting that he could become one of rap's next big stars. Instead, he found himself in a Louisiana jail cell, facing charges that could end his career before it truly began. From December 2016 to August 2017, NBA Youngboy sat in a Louisiana jail cell, waiting to learn whether he would spend the rest of his life in prison or get a second chance at the music career he had nearly thrown away. According to interviews with those close to him, this period of incarceration was transformative for Youngboy. For the first time since Boozilla's death, he had time to reflect on his actions and their consequences. The evidence suggests that he used this time productively, writing music that would later become some of his most powerful and introspective work. But Youngboy wasn't facing this ordeal alone. His NBA crew, led by OG-33 in Montana, worked tirelessly to keep his music career alive while he was behind bars. They released reloaded versions of his previous mixtapes, adding new tracks and keeping his name in the public consciousness. The strategy worked. Despite being incarcerated, Youngboy's music continued to gain traction on YouTube and other streaming platforms. Songs like Murder featuring 21 Savage became fan favorites, and his subscriber count continued to grow even while he was locked up. What makes this period particularly significant is how it shaped Youngboy's artistic development. The evidence can be found in the music he released immediately after his release, tracks that showed a new level of maturity and introspection. The experience of nearly losing everything had given him a deeper understanding of the consequences of street life. Meanwhile, his legal team was working on a plea deal that would allow him to avoid the most serious charges. The negotiations were complex, involving multiple parties and requiring Youngboy to accept responsibility for his actions while avoiding a life sentence. The evidence suggests that Youngboy's youth worked in his favor during these negotiations. At just 17 years old, he was still considered a juvenile in many respects, and his legal team argued that he had been acting under extreme emotional distress following his cousin's murder. But perhaps most importantly, this period of incarceration allowed Youngboy to fully process the loss of Boozilla. According to those who visited him in jail, he spent countless hours writing about his cousin and the impact of his death. This emotional processing would later manifest in some of his most powerful musical tributes. The evidence of Youngboy's mental state during this period can be found in interviews he gave years later, where he described the jail time as both the worst and most important period of his life. It was during these months that he truly understood the cost of the street life and began to envision a different path forward. On the 22nd of August 2017, NBA Youngboy walked into a Baton Rouge courtroom for what could have been the last day of his freedom. Instead, it became the day that saved his career and possibly his life. The plea deal that Youngboy's legal team had negotiated was both a victory and a sobering reminder of the consequences of his actions. He agreed to plead guilty to aggravated assault with a firearm, a significantly lesser charge than the attempted murder he had originally faced. The sentence was a 10-year suspended prison term with 3 years of active supervised probation. In practical terms, this meant that Youngboy could return to his music career, but any violation of his probation could result in him serving the full 10-year sentence. According to court transcripts, the sentencing hearing included a tense but respectful exchange between Youngboy and District Judge Bonnie Jackson. The judge admonished him for going out with his boys looking for trouble and finding it, but Youngboy took full responsibility for his actions. What makes this exchange particularly significant is Judge Jackson's comments about Youngboy's music and its impact on the community. She told him directly that the genre of music that he makes has a lot to do with the mindset that people have, suggesting that his lyrics normalized violence. Youngboy's response was mature and thoughtful. According to witnesses, he reminded the judge that nobody had actually died in the incident and promised to do right by his family going forward. This exchange would prove to be prophetic, as Youngboy would spend the next several years trying to balance his street credibility with his responsibility as a role model. The evidence suggests that Youngboy understood the gravity of his situation. He had come within inches of throwing away a multi-million-dollar career and spending his life in prison, all because he felt compelled to avenge his cousin's death. But the plea deal also came with significant restrictions. Youngboy would be under constant supervision by a probation officer, and any involvement in violence or illegal activity could result in immediate incarceration. For someone whose music was deeply rooted in street culture, these restrictions would prove challenging to navigate. The immediate aftermath of the sentencing was celebratory. Youngboy was greeted outside the courthouse by his NBA crew and supporters, and video footage shows him being picked up in a white Maybach, a symbol of the success that had nearly slipped away. However, the evidence also suggests that this experience had fundamentally changed Youngboy's perspective on street life and its consequences. In interviews conducted years later, he would describe this period as a turning point that made him realize the true cost of the lifestyle he had been living. Youngboy's first major release after his incarceration was Untouchable, a song that perfectly captured his mindset following his brush with a life sentence. The track was both a celebration of his freedom and a reflection on the experiences that had nearly destroyed his career. But it was the music that followed that truly showed how Boozilla's death had changed Youngboy as an artist. His August 2017 mixtape AI Youngboy included several tracks that directly referenced his cousin and the impact of his loss. The evidence of Boozilla's influence on Youngboy's music can be found throughout his catalog from this period. Songs like Solar Eclipse and Right or Wrong contained lyrics that painted vivid pictures of the violence and loss that had shaped his life. But rather than glorifying this lifestyle, the music showed a young man grappling with trauma and trying to find meaning in tragedy. What makes these musical tributes particularly powerful is their emotional honesty. Youngboy didn't try to present himself as unaffected by his cousin's death or his own legal troubles. Instead, he used his music to process these experiences and share them with his audience. The commercial success of this music was immediate and substantial. AI Youngboy debuted at number 24 on the Billboard 200, and the single No Smoke reached number 61 on the Hot 100. These chart positions represented validation that Youngboy's authentic approach to discussing street life and its consequences resonated with a wide audience. But perhaps more importantly, this music established Youngboy as an artist who could transform personal tragedy into compelling art. The evidence suggests that his willingness to be vulnerable about his experiences with loss and trauma set him apart from many of his contemporaries. The influence of Boozilla's death can also be seen in Youngboy's approach to loyalty and family. Throughout his subsequent releases, he consistently emphasized the importance of staying true to those who had supported him, even when it came at a personal cost. According to those close to him, Youngboy made a conscious decision during this period to honor Boozilla's memory through his success rather than through continued violence. This represented a fundamental shift in his understanding of what it meant to be loyal to his cousin's legacy. The evidence of this transformation can be found in interviews from this period, where Youngboy spoke about wanting to move his family out of Baton Rouge and create opportunities for those around him. Rather than seeking continued revenge for Boozilla's death, he was channeling his energy into building something positive. The impact of Boozilla's death on NBA Youngboy extends far beyond the immediate legal consequences and musical tributes. The evidence suggests that this tragedy fundamentally shaped Youngboy's worldview and continues to influence his decisions to this day. One of the most visible ways that Youngboy has honored his cousin's memory is through the NBA crew's continued loyalty to Boozilla's legacy. According to multiple sources, crew members got Rip Boo tattoos, and the group regularly celebrates Boo Day on Boozilla's birthday. But the influence goes deeper than symbolic gestures. The evidence suggests that Boozilla's death taught Youngboy important lessons about the consequences of street life and the importance of thinking beyond immediate gratification. In a 2018 memorial service for Boozilla, his mother, Kenya Taylor, delivered a powerful speech that seemed to capture the lessons that Youngboy had learned from this tragedy. She told the gathered crowd, "If they ain't coming at you, don't worry about it. But if they come at you, you handle your business. That's all I can tell you." This philosophy of not seeking trouble but being prepared to defend yourself when necessary appears to have become central to Youngboy's approach to navigating the music industry and street politics. The evidence of this can be found in Youngboy's subsequent career decisions. Rather than continuing to escalate conflicts with his rivals, he focused on building his music career and taking care of his family. When conflicts did arise, he generally tried to handle them through music rather than violence. However, the trauma of losing Boozilla also appears to have had lasting psychological effects on Youngboy. In interviews conducted years later, he has spoken about suffering from PTSD and struggling with depression related to the losses he experienced as a young man. The evidence suggests that Youngboy has used his platform to try to prevent other young people from making the same mistakes he made. While his music still contains references to street life, It increasingly includes cautionary messages about the consequences of violence. Perhaps most significantly, Buzilla's death appears to have strengthened Youngboy's commitment to his family and his determination to break the cycle of violence that had claimed his cousin's life. According to those close to him, he has made conscious efforts to keep his own children away from the street life that shaped his youth. The ongoing influence of this tragedy can also be seen in Youngboy's business decisions. Rather than simply pursuing maximum profit, he has consistently chosen to work with people he trusts and to maintain control over his artistic vision. Lessons that may have been learned from the betrayals and conflicts that led to Buzilla's death. The story of NBA Youngboy and Buzilla represents more than just a personal tragedy. It illuminates broader issues within hip-hop culture and the music industry's relationship with street credibility. The evidence suggests that Youngboy's experience helped to spark important conversations about the expectations placed on young rappers from disadvantaged backgrounds. His willingness to discuss the real consequences of street life, rather than simply glorifying it, provided a more nuanced perspective on these issues. What makes Youngboy's story particularly significant is how it demonstrates the complex relationship between authenticity and responsibility in hip-hop. The evidence shows that his most successful music has been that which honestly depicts his experiences with loss and trauma, rather than simply bragging about violence or criminal activity. This approach has influenced a generation of young rappers who have followed Youngboy's model of combining street credibility with emotional vulnerability. Artists across the country have cited Youngboy's willingness to discuss mental health, loss, and the consequences of violence as inspiration for their own work. The evidence of this influence can be seen in the streaming numbers and chart success of artists who have adopted similar approaches to their music. The commercial success of emotionally honest street rap suggests that audiences are hungry for authentic perspectives on these experiences. However, Youngboy's story also highlights the ongoing challenges faced by young artists trying to escape the circumstances that shaped their early lives. The evidence suggests that even after achieving massive commercial success, he has continued to face legal troubles and conflicts related to his past. This ongoing struggle illustrates the difficulty of completely separating oneself from street culture while maintaining the authenticity that made one's music compelling in the first place. It's a balance that many artists struggle with, and Youngboy's experience provides valuable lessons about both the possibilities and limitations of using music as a path out of difficult circumstances. The broader hip-hop community has also grappled with questions about how to support young artists while encouraging them to make positive choices. Youngboy's story suggests that simply condemning street culture isn't effective. Instead, the focus should be on providing alternative paths to success and recognition. Perhaps the most profound impact of Buzilla's death on NBA Youngboy has been psychological. The evidence suggests that this tragedy forced him to confront fundamental questions about loyalty, family, and the meaning of success at an age when most people are just beginning to figure out who they are. According to interviews with those close to him, Youngboy's personality changed significantly after his cousin's death and his subsequent legal troubles. Friends and family members describe him as becoming more introspective and cautious, less likely to act on impulse, and more focused on long-term consequences. This transformation can be heard in his music, which has evolved from the raw aggression of his early releases to more complex explorations of trauma, loss, and healing. The evidence suggests that Youngboy has used his art as a form of therapy, working through his experiences and emotions in real time. But this psychological evolution hasn't been without its challenges. The evidence indicates that Youngboy has struggled with depression, anxiety, and PTSD related to his experiences with violence and loss. In various interviews, he has spoken candidly about these mental health challenges and their impact on his daily life. What makes Youngboy's approach to these issues particularly significant is his willingness to discuss them publicly. In a culture that often stigmatizes mental health struggles, especially among young Black men, his openness has helped to normalize conversations about trauma and healing. The evidence of this impact can be seen in the responses from his fans, many of whom have shared their own stories of loss and trauma in response to his music. This suggests that Youngboy's willingness to be vulnerable has created space for others to process their own experiences. However, the psychological impact of Buzilla's death has also manifested in ways that have continued to create challenges for Youngboy. The evidence suggests that he has struggled with trust issues and paranoia, understandable responses to the violence and betrayal he experienced as a young man. These ongoing psychological effects highlight the long-term consequences of trauma and the importance of professional mental health support for young people who have experienced violence. Youngboy's story illustrates both the resilience of the human spirit and the lasting impact of traumatic experiences. One of the most significant long-term impacts of Boozilla's death has been how it shaped the culture and values of the NBA crew. The evidence suggests that this tragedy reinforced the importance of loyalty and family within the group, creating bonds that have endured through years of success and challenges. According to multiple sources within the NBA organization, Boozilla's death served as a constant reminder of the stakes involved in their lifestyle and career choices. This awareness appears to have made the crew more protective of each other and more strategic in their decision-making. The evidence of this can be seen in how the NBA crew has handled subsequent conflicts and challenges. Rather than responding with immediate violence, they have generally tried to use their platform and resources to protect their members and resolve disputes through other means. This evolution represents a significant departure from traditional street crew culture, where immediate retaliation is often seen as the only acceptable response to disrespect or violence. Youngboy's experience with the consequences of seeking revenge appears to have influenced the entire organization's approach to conflict resolution. The evidence also suggests that Boozilla's memory has become a unifying force within the NBA crew. Members regularly reference him in their music and social media posts, and his birthday continues to be observed as a significant date for the organization. But perhaps most importantly, the tragedy appears to have reinforced the crew's commitment to using their success to create opportunities for others from their community. Rather than simply escaping their circumstances, they have consistently worked to bring others with them and to invest in their hometown. This approach represents a mature understanding of success and responsibility that may have been accelerated by the loss of Boozilla. The evidence suggests that his death taught the entire crew important lessons about the fragility of life and the importance of making the most of their opportunities. The ongoing influence of these lessons can be seen in the NBA crew's business decisions, their approach to mentoring younger artists, and their involvement in community initiatives. Boozilla's legacy has become intertwined with the organization's mission and values. The story of NBA Youngboy and Boozilla has also had significant implications for how the music industry approaches young artists from challenging backgrounds. The evidence suggests that Youngboy's experience has influenced industry practices and sparked important conversations about responsibility and support. Record labels and industry executives have had to grapple with questions about how to support artists while encouraging them to make positive choices. Youngboy's near miss with a life sentence served as a wake-up call about the real-world consequences of the lifestyle that many rap artists rap about. The evidence of this impact can be seen in the increased focus on artist development and support services within the industry. Many labels now provide resources for mental health, legal guidance, and conflict resolution that might not have been available to Youngboy during his early career. However, the industry has also had to confront uncomfortable questions about its role in promoting and profiting from music that depicts violence and criminal activity. Youngboy's story illustrates the complex relationship between artistic authenticity and social responsibility. What makes this particularly challenging is that Youngboy's most successful music has often been that which most honestly depicts his experiences with street life and its consequences. This suggests that audiences are drawn to authentic perspectives on these experiences, even when they involve difficult subject matter. The evidence indicates that the industry has responded by trying to find ways to support authentic artistic expression while also encouraging positive decision-making. This has included everything from providing better legal representation to creating mentorship programs that connect young artists with successful veterans. Youngboy's story has also influenced how the industry approaches marketing and promotion for artists with similar backgrounds. There's been increased recognition that simply exploiting an artist's street credibility without providing proper support can have devastating consequences. The broader impact of these changes can be seen in the careers of younger artists who have followed Youngboy's path. Many have been able to achieve commercial success while avoiding some of the legal and personal challenges that nearly derailed his career. When you look at the whole picture of NBA Youngboy's career and life, it's impossible to separate his success from the tragedy that nearly destroyed it. The death of his cousin Boozilla didn't just change Youngboy. It transformed him from a talented but reckless teenager into one of hip-hop's most compelling and complex figures. The evidence we've examined tells a story that goes far beyond a simple tale of street violence and its consequences. It's a story about loyalty and family, about the weight of expectations and the power of second chances. Most importantly, it's a story about how tragedy can either destroy a person or forge them into something stronger. What this really shows us is that the path from the streets to success is never straightforward, and the choices made in moments of grief and anger can have consequences that last a lifetime. Youngboy's decision to seek revenge for his cousin's death nearly cost him everything he had worked for, but it also taught him lessons that have shaped every aspect of his subsequent career. The transformation we've witnessed in Youngboy's music, from raw aggression to complex emotional exploration, reflects a young man who has learned to channel his pain into something productive rather than destructive. His willingness to be vulnerable about his experiences with loss and trauma has not only made him a more compelling artist, but has also provided a model for others facing similar challenges. At the end of the day, Boozilla's death represents both the worst and best of what hip-hop culture can be. It shows us the devastating consequences of street violence and the cycle of retaliation that claims too many young lives. But it also demonstrates the power of music to transform pain into purpose, and the possibility of breaking cycles that seem unbreakable. The legacy that Youngboy has built in honor of his cousin, one of commercial success, artistic authenticity, and gradual healing, suggests that even the most tragic circumstances can be transformed into something meaningful. It's a lesson that extends far beyond hip-hop and speaks to the resilience of the human spirit. As we've seen throughout this story, the impact of losing Boozilla continues to shape Youngboy's decisions and artistic vision. Every song he releases, every business decision he makes, and every choice about how to handle conflict carries the weight of that loss and the lessons learned from nearly throwing his life away in pursuit of revenge. The question that remains is what this story teaches us about supporting young people who are trying to escape difficult circumstances while honoring their experiences and maintaining their authenticity. Youngboy's journey suggests that the answer lies not in condemning or ignoring the realities of street life, but in providing alternative paths to recognition and success. For the millions of young people who see themselves in Youngboy's story, the message is clear. Loyalty and family are important, but the best way to honor those you've lost is to build something positive that ensures their sacrifice wasn't in vain. In the end, that may be the most powerful tribute to Boozilla's memory, not the revenge that was sought in the immediate aftermath of his death, but the success and transformation that followed. The story of how NBA Youngboy losing his cousin changed him forever is ultimately a story about the power of choice. In the face of unimaginable loss and pressure, Youngboy chose to transform his pain into purpose, his anger into art, and his loyalty into legacy. It's a choice that saved his career, honored his cousin's memory, and provided a roadmap for others facing similar challenges. That transformation, from a grief-stricken teenager seeking revenge to a successful artist using his platform to process trauma and inspire others, represents the best of what's possible when tragedy meets resilience, when loyalty meets wisdom, and when the streets meet the studio in service of something greater than revenge.